After a very choppy couple of days crossing the Bay of Biscay and out to Madeira, we arrived in Funchal just a couple of hours late. Unfortunately, it was rather wet, and we only had time for quite a brief tour, which we'd arranged ahead of time with a local taxi driver, Ricardo. We did have time, however, for a very smart high tea in the famous Reed's Hotel. Diane and Ken were the first couple ever to be married on Oriana, following its re-registration in Bermuda. Captain Hamish Reed officiated, and we were all invited. The ceremony took place in the Captain's Lounge and was very well organised by P&O, specifically by Mike O'Connor and Justin Cohen.
Look, it's lovely. That's gorgeous. Are you singing?
All right, boys. Congratulations. 1, 2, 3. Congratulations and celebrations. We want the world to know how happy you can be. Congratulations and celebrations. We want the world to know how happy you can be. We want the world to know.
Next stop, Barbados, where we shared the cruise terminal with Ocean Village and Celebrity Galaxy. We had arranged independently to take a trip on the Atlantis submarine, which begins with a slightly choppy boat ride out to sea where the submarine is moored, ready for us to get on board. We spent the afternoon in Bridgetown, had lunch, a little walk around. Quite a bit of development going on, probably for tourism. Pelican retail centre near the cruise terminal seemed quieter than ever. But now anyway, it's time to go back on board, while the crew are preparing the ship to sail away in a typically P&O, very noisy fashion. We are anchored off the new cruise terminal on Isla Margarita, just off the coast of Venezuela. We've pre-arranged an island tour with an American couple, Steve and Marcella, who now live on the island. Our first stop is the old Spanish fort of La Galera, near the city of Juan Griego. This fort is important in Venezuelan history because it was the first place taken by Simón Bolívar in his campaign to liberate the Spanish provinces of South America. And this is the resort of Hesperia, one of the new holiday resorts springing up all over the island, complete with its own golf course and beaches. This is the very beautiful bay of Manzanillo, which is still dominated by fishing boats. The 17th century castle of Santa Rosa overlooks the city of La Asunción, which happens to be the provincial capital of this part of Venezuela. And down there in the city you can just see the tower of the oldest church in Venezuela. And our last stop was the resort of El Yaque. capital of the Netherlands Antilles, Willemstad in Curaçao, a very colourful town, mixing Dutch architecture with the Caribbean sunshine. This unique pontoon bridge allows you to cross between Punda and Otrabanda, and you get a great view of the modern road bridge further up the harbour. The bridge's built-in engines allow it to swing aside to allow shipping to go up into the inner harbour. Not all Willemstad's tourist attractions are completely unique. The oldest synagogue in the Western Hemisphere, still operational with a small congregation. This might look like a Christian church, but in fact it's the new synagogue. Still a couple of 100 years old though. The Cura Ulanda is at the same time a luxury hotel, a World Heritage Site and a museum. It's built out of a restored old quarter of Curaçao, and the restored buildings constitute the hotel buildings as well as the museum, which contains some really ancient artifacts going back to the Egyptians and other ancient civilizations. In effect, it seeks to tell the story of the human race from a non-European perspective, with a major emphasis on the African slave trade. There's got to be a joke worth telling about this parrot that went into a bar in Curaçao. "6:30 AM and Oriana is waiting just off the Gatun locks for its turn to start the transit of the Panama Canal. The rowing boat brings two men who are going to attach lines to Oriana, which will later be connected to the mules, the locomotives, which will take us through the canal. There they are, lined up waiting for us. The gates to the lowest of the three locks, opening now, ready for us to go in. The gates to the middle lock opening now. The level in the top lock will have to be reduced to equalise the level in the lock we're in before we can move forward. Entering the top lock now. And now we're in Gatun Lake, the great artificial lake created by the engineers to feed the canal system, waiting for our turn to be allowed to go further on. It's just after 9 o'clock, so our transit of the Gatun locks has taken about 2.5 hours. About 10 o'clock, after about an hour at anchor, we're slowly on our way again across Gatun Lake towards the Guyard Cut. It's now just 12 o'clock noon, so it's taken us about 2 hours to cross Gatun Lake, and here we are just entering the Guyard Cut, previously known as the Culebra Cut. Running alongside the canal through this cut is the Panama Railway, which actually predates the canal and was in fact a vital component in the building of the canal. The canal company has a lot of its maintenance and operational bases along this section of the canal.
During the actual canal construction period, it was called Culebra Cut, but was then renamed for Colonel David Dubois Gaillard, the engineer who was in charge of the section of the canal work. It was here, heavy reading. It was dangerous work, really dangerous, dust and smoke to construct the canal. Ships that carried the boxes of dynamite had to actually be unloaded by...
The bridge carries the railway and a road across the Chagres River, which feeds water into the canal system from a lake higher up. Lots of work going on the banks of the cut. This cut has been widened at least twice already, and will be widened again if proposals to increase the size of the canal go ahead. Centennial Bridge coming into view. This was opened in 2003, the centenary of the foundation of the Panama Republic, and it was built to relieve traffic on the Bridge of the Americas, which until then was the only bridge across the canal. And this webcam capture of us passing under the bridge was made by Manuela. And now, just coming into view in the distance, Pedro Miguel Lock. And as we approach Pedro Miguel, it's about 2:10, so it's taken us about 2 hours to transit the Guyard Cut. Here comes the rowing boat with the cables to attach us to the mules. Entering the lock now. Millions of gallons of water emptying from the lock. And the gates begin to swing open. And we clear Pedro Miguel Lock just after 3 o'clock, so that's been about an hour. 3:25, about 20 minutes later, we're entering Miraflores Lock, which is not very far away from Pedro Miguel, the by now familiar site of the mules. Oriana entering the upper chamber of Miraflores. The visitor centre at Miraflores is absolutely packed with tourists. And there's another webcam here as well, and Liz made this capture for us. Now we're entering the lower chamber of Miraflores Locks. This swing bridge seems now to be disused. The roads leading up to it on either side have been taken away. Water being emptied from the lower chamber now to equalise our level with the Pacific Ocean. Letting go of our last mule. And we exit Miraflores Locks at about 4:30. So that's a total of about 10 hours for our transit of the Panama Canal. 10 minutes later, and we're within sight of Panama City. And at 5 o'clock, we're sailing under the Bridge of the Americas, opened in 1963, part of the Pan American Highway. For 40 years, the only proper road crossing of the Panama Canal. And now, Oriana is heading out to sea again. The narrow entrance to Acapulco Bay, which is almost totally enclosed. Luxury hotels and condominiums now line the edges of Acapulco Bay. The big tourist attraction in Acapulco are the famous cliff divers, including one young lady. The divers belong to a couple of local families who've been doing this for years.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, big applause to the cliff divers. So, welcome everybody to the Hotel Restaurant, Middle Hotel Acapulco. How are you today, everybody?
And back in the hotel lobby, the divers come to collect their tips. A cold 6 o'clock in the morning, And this is the best view we got all day of the Golden Gate Bridge. By the time we've disembarked at Pier 35, it's turned into a rather misty San Francisco morning. What's all that noise? And what's everybody looking at? Well, these sea lions moved in here by Pier 39 after the last big earthquake. And now they're protected and can't be moved. Fresh crabs and other seafood on sale everywhere. Thinking of San Francisco, you have to think about the famous cable cars. And a couple of routes have been fully restored now, so it's possible again to enjoy this San Francisco institution. There's no motor on the cable car itself. It's pulled along by a moving cable under the road. And a great deal of physical effort is required by the driver to connect the car to the drive cable and also to operate the brakes when the cars are going downhill, which they do quite a lot of. In every direction in San Francisco. At the cable car turnaround at the top of this route, near Union Square, there's a very noisy but good-natured anti-war demonstration going on. Back down at sea level, two contrasting modes of transport as we head for lunch. And we had lunch here, the famous Pier 39. Late afternoon now, early evening back on board, and it's still quite hazy, but you can just make out the Golden Gate Bridge through that haze, honest. But the excitement for the day isn't over yet. Ken's 60th birthday to celebrate.
That's you. Sorry, it is. It is only me. Nobody else has anything to do with it. That is my good. Well,
that sort of colonial area. Anyway,
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, happy birthday, happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Ken. Happy birthday to you.
We arrived in Honolulu on time after 4 days of rather choppy Pacific weather. We knew when we arrived that we were going to get an extra day here because the bad weather had caused problems for the refueling system in the port of Honolulu, and we were going to have to wait over a day for the necessary refueling of Oriana. On the first morning we had a pre-booked P&O tour, which turned out to be a bit of a nature trail as well as a natural history tour, starting in the crater of this extinct volcano, which had been much taken over by the military during the Second World War and was gradually being restored to recreational use. Our next stop was Hanuma Bay, which is a nature reserve as well as being a very beautiful beach. And you can get absolutely genuine Italian ice cream in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. On to a much more rugged part of the coast of Oahu. This is Halona Cove. And on this very beach here, Deborah Kerr and Burt Lancaster kissed in From Here to Eternity. We continue our anti-clockwise tour of the island coast, and here we are now at Waimanalo Bay. Ulupu Heiau is an ancient Hawaiian temple dating back to the very earliest days of human occupation in the Hawaiian Islands. But you do need a huge amount of imagination to visualize its 180 foot by 140 foot extent and its 30 foot high walls. Our last stop on this tour, the site of the Battle of Nuani in 1795, when King Kamehameha the Great first unified the Hawaiian Islands and established his dynasty, which continued to rule until the late 19th century. In the afternoon we got a taxi out to Pearl Harbor, which is about 20 minutes away from central Honolulu. The naval base includes several memorials, all of them free to enter, of which the most famous is that to the battleship Arizona, which was sunk on December the 7th, 1941. You're transported to the memorial site on a launch operated by the US Navy, with immaculately turned out sailors on board. There isn't actually a lot of the ship that you can see above the water or through the water. Most of the superstructure was removed by the US Navy during the Second World War for salvage. Fuel oil is still leaking from the Arizona at the rate of about half a gallon a day, apparently. Above all, the Arizona is a tomb for over 1,000 men who died on December the 7th, 1941, and also for some of their comrades who survived that day but have opted to be buried here when their time comes. On the way back to the visitor centre, we passed by one of the other exhibits, the submarine USS Bowfin. The morning of the second day, we used Honolulu's excellent public transport system and took the bus to Waikiki, starting at this mall, the International Marketplace, which appears to be built round this amazing banyan tree. It's on land apparently given by the Queen of Hawaii in the late 19th century, so seems to be immune from developers. Unlike every other square inch of Waikiki, which is being covered with luxury hotels, expensive shops and glitzy shopping malls. But what do we really think about when we hear the name Waikiki? Waikiki Beach is entirely artificial. It used to be a swamp, and in the 1920s or 30s, sand was brought here from another part of the island, and it has to be occasionally replenished. We were a little surprised that the beach wasn't completely populated by bronzed youth. In fact, there seemed to be a predominance of middle-aged bodies on display. Back into Honolulu for the afternoon, and a short visit to the old royal capital. Not many cities in the United States have one of those. The centrepiece is the Iolani Palace, which was the seat of the monarchs of Hawaii until the 1890s when they were overthrown. The decoration on the coronation pavilion in the grounds of the palace shows how the Hawaiian kings, particularly Kamehameha III, played off the great powers against each other, showing how the Hawaiian flag was an amalgamation of the British and American flags. The former Royal Guard House is now the visitor centre and ticket office. Across King Street from the palace is the old royal government buildings, with the statue of King Kamehameha the Great, who founded the Hawaiian Kingdom, and who in his younger days met Captain Cook, allegedly. And in the palace grounds, King Kamehameha's burial mound. Hawaii's 1950s state capitol building is just behind the Iolani Palace.
Hello! Good afternoon everybody, and welcome once again to the pool deck here, decades after pool, of course, for our crossing of the equator, which we passed this morning. Neptune was booked on another ship at the time, so that's why we had to hold it this afternoon. Everybody clapping your hands, come on guys!
Touch the sky. Shake your body, girl, touch the ground. Up and down and all around. Hold your hand and hold your ears and hold your nose and hold your mouth and hold your neck and hold your shoulders, hold your chest and touch the wrist and...
Wonderful. Come on around here, Neptune and the team. So applause to King Neptune and his team, everybody please, if you give me some kind round you come. There it is, it's King Neptune. Looking amazingly like Dave from our tours department, but it's Neptune everybody. There he is, there he is. Neptune's team over the other side, please. The other side. Everybody here, we have to squeeze you up. I'm afraid all our spectators, squeeze you up if we may. There we go. The more you see these people, the more stripes they've got. It's called epilepsy. Right? Spectators ready? Let the game commence! And it's all the shots, not like, one eye behind your back there, officer! Go on, whack see anything. The head's coming up. The head's coming up. One of It's two. Right, safe. Let the game. Wait for it. Wait for it. Let the game commence. One on behind. Oh, just helpless. Oh! Spectators ready. Let the game commence.
A very hot and humid day in Apia, the capital of Samoa. Formerly a German colony, then a British colony, and now an independent Polynesian nation. Samoa's a long way from anywhere, like all the Polynesian countries, and it relies now very heavily on tourism. The beehive-shaped building is the information centre for visitors, in the style of a traditional Samoan house. The church is in the style of a European Christian church. There are many churches on Samoa, of many different Christian denominations. The general appearance of Apia, though, is, to say the least, a little bit run down. We took a P&O tour for the morning, and we never quite knew where we were, because although our guide was extremely charming, she was only told the evening before that she was to do this tour, and she'd not actually visited most of these sites herself. We're reasonably convinced that that round building was the new Parliament building, and we're certain that this was the main market. And this is the main bus station. And our next stop was a Catholic theological college, apparently about 100 years old. A very pleasant, if plain church, with quite a bit of good stained glass, and unique amongst Catholic churches of our acquaintance, no collection box anywhere to put a donation in. The buses used for this tour, and for all transport on Samoa, are unair-conditioned bone shakers. We did know where we were for our final stop on the tour, however, which was the home built by Robert Louis Stevenson, who lived on this island for many years. On a hill overlooking Apia, the house has great gardens, a good view, and is a relief from the hot, humid air. He was known as Tusitala, the storyteller, by the Samoans, and they still seem to have quite an affection for him, which might not be entirely due only to his tourist potentiality. Back to Apia for lunch at the famous Aggie Gray's Hotel, And then out again into the even steamier, more humid afternoon. Some of us couldn't quite take it. Another hot and even more humid day, and we're in Suva, capital of Fiji, moored alongside the Amsterdam. The harbour area isn't particularly salubrious, and it's extremely busy, with permanently gridlocked traffic while we were here. The main traditional markets are very close by. Just a little way out is Albert Park and the old government buildings. Parliament no longer meets here, they've built themselves a new building further out. But cricket is still played here, and the British High Commission still maintains these cricket pitches. Plenty of older wooden buildings in this part of town. Some of them have been well maintained or refurbished, some of them not so much. This one is marked on the map as being a luxury hotel. It looks like refurbishment is in progress. Government House, where the most recent coup leader has installed himself as president. Back in downtown Suva, with its mix of the run-down and shabby and some very modern buildings, Suva Central is the tallest building in Fiji. The stones for the cathedral were shipped all the way from Australia. Back to the harbour side to watch Amsterdam sail away before it's time for us to get back on board Oriana for the last leg of our voyage. Oriana alongside the cruise ship terminal in Auckland, where we take our leave for the last time. And wave to Vicky and Dave, who are just joining the ship in Auckland. And Madhu, who's quite possibly the best waiter in the P&O fleet. And a last wave to what remains on board of our great table,